Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, February 7th, 2023 in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of this meeting is to transact the regular business of the Board and to transact any other business to come properly before the Board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct it to be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, February 2nd, 2023, caused to be posted at the Office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Patty, can we have a roll call?
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Here.
Mike Beelan,
Here.
Kent Diamond,
Here.
Brendan Galligan,
Here.
Layla Morelli, here. Sonal Patel,
Here.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz,
Here.
Mary Wickens.
Here.
Thank you. Rob, will you lead us in a flag salute today?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Announcements. Mary.
Okay. The Westfield Parent-Teacher Council Special Education Committee invites parents and educators to attend the 28th Annual Awareness Expo on Wednesday, March 15th, 2023, beginning at 7:15 p.m. at Edison Intermediate School, 800 Rahway Avenue in Westfield. The evening will include multiple workshops by members of the professional special needs community on such topics as managing behaviors, advocacy and legal rights, college planning, and more. The Awareness Expo will commence with the presentation of Special Ed Committee's 20th Annual Make a Difference Award. 14 intermediate school student musicians auditioned and were accepted into region band and orchestra ensembles. They are Aboria Abrams, bassoon, AJ Bastian Palal, trumpet, Lilia Duval, violin, Alejandro Phillips Vasquez, tuba, Serena Shi, flute, Andrew Song, viola, Alex Fu, trumpet, Alex Hugh, violin, Mia Kim, violin, Justin O, cello, Ethan Wacko, trumpet, Jackie Mohan, French horn, Alex Giangone, tuba, and Nathan DeBole, trumpet.
Thank you, Mary. Sonal?
Save the dates for the Westfield STEM Camp 2023. Campers in grades 3 through 8 may attend 1 week from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and are selected by lottery. Students entering grades 6 through 8 will attend July 10th through the 14th, while students entering grades 3 through 5 will have a choice to attend July 17th to the 21st or July 24 to 28. Visit the news section on the district and school websites for additional information. Registration will open in mid-February. I also have two. This is a reminder to the Westfield community to please visit the district's school budget portal, which is posted on the district and school websites. The budget portal will be updated frequently and seeks to provide Westfield voters all of the information they will need to make an informed decision regarding the 2023-2024 school budget when they go to the polls on April 25th, 2023. It includes notification and explanation of the 2-question ballot, a history of school budget process, both a written account and a 1-minute video, a list of common terms, voter registration info, a form for Westfield residents to submit questions and comments for consideration in the FAQ section of the portal.
Thank you, Sonal. Layla?
Westfield High School's No Place for Hate Committee invites Westfield High School students, faculty, parents, and community members to join in a community discussion of Mouse 2, the second installment of a graphic novel that ties together the powerful stories of a Holocaust survivor and his son. The discussion will be held on Thursday, March 2nd from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in the Student Center at Westfield High School. If you'd like to take part, please RSVP via a Google form, which can be found on the Community Flyers page under Student Initiatives on the district and school websites. If you plan on attending, you are welcome to request a copy of the book for free. The committee is able to provide a copy for the first 30 people who request one. The free copies will be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis, so sign up soon. The Westfield Education Association will cover the cost of a book, and the books will be purchased from the town bookstore.
Thank you, Leila. Kent?
Thank you. Petitions are being accepted for candidacy in the April 25th, 2023 school board election. The deadline to submit to Business Administrator/Board Secretary Patricia Ramos is 3 p.m. on March 6th via email at pramos@westfieldnjk12.org or regular mail at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, 07090. For petition templates and additional information, visit www.westfieldnjk12.org, click on the Board tab in the menu, and choose the Board election page. Next, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Westfield is offering a new way to experience our town's African American history. The museum exhibit, an initiative of the organization's African American History Project, will be featured at the Rialto, now known as the Center for Creativity at the Rialto. The exhibit, generously funded by the Westfield Foundation, is free to the public and will be a class trip destination for many of Westfield's students in the month of February. All events and entry to the exhibits are free. Due to limited capacity, admission is on a first-come, first-served basis. For more information, visit mlkwestfield.org and or contact mlkwestfield@gmail.com. Hang on, we got a few more. The College Women's Club of Westfield annually awards up to $10,000 in scholarships to young women from Westfield on the basis of academics, leadership, and financial need. The 2023 application is available at cwclubwestfield.org. That's cwclubwestfield.org. To be considered, applications must be received in the Westfield High School Counseling Department by Wednesday, March 15th. For additional information, please contact cwc.westfield@gmail.com. And for some good news, all Westfield public schools will be closed on Friday, February 17th and Monday, February 20th in observance of President's Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent, for all of those announcements. Rob?
I just have the one. All four of the Westfield High School student musicians who qualified for Region Band in January also were awarded spots in All-State Band. They are Nolan Daly, 11th grade, trumpet, All-State Symphonic Band; Charlie Hu, 11th grade, oboe, All-State Wind Ensemble; Liliana Lincoln, 9th grade, clarinet, All-State Symphonic Band; Sarah Lincoln, 11th grade, contrabass clarinet, All-State Wind Ensemble. Recently, the state made available digital copies of the All-State programs back to the first year it was held in 1937. Band directors Christopher Vitale and Trevor Sindorf did some tallying out of curiosity, discovering that these four students are the 86th, 87th, 88th, and 89th students in WHS history to make the New Jersey All-State Band, highlighting how difficult it is to get to that point. All four will travel to Atlantic City the weekend of February 24th to rehearse with the bands, culminating in a performance at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center in Newark on Sunday, February 26th.
Thank you, Rob. Kristen?
I have two. Can you hear me? District staff attended and presented at last month's Texpo 2023. Chief Technology Officer Brian Auker, District Network Manager Arvin Vidal, and Assistant Network Manager Joseph Mariteo discussed the safety and security challenges that schools face today and how security needs should be adapted and modified to meet the ever-changing security landscape. Lincoln School Dr. Tiffany Jacobson, Lincoln Kindergarten teacher Tony Redman, and Master Instructional Technology teacher Janine Gotgo shared how Google Classroom can be used to leverage collaboration among teacher teams and the lessons learned during the pandemic. And then my second one, Jefferson fourth grader Sydney Lupkin, I should have asked that, I'm sorry. And Westfield High School 12th grader Cole Epstein were among the finalists in the recent Poster, Poetry, and PSA Palooza contest, organized by the WHS Dream Team and the Westfield Municipal Alliance, with support of the Albert Anthony Cahill Foundation and the Matthew Thomas Torriello Memorial Fund. The annual contest is open to all students in Westfield who are asked to submit an entry depicting the theme, Westfield, we have better things to do, healthy choices, everyday choices. Members of the Dream Team host activities and serve as peer models for healthy choices throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Mike?
Yes, I have two this evening. Westfield students were among 146 graders from 5 school districts at the Union County Gifted and Talented Association event on January 13th. The amateur sleuths used observations, critical thinking, deductive reasoning, collaboration, and problem-solving skills to solve a fictional crime. Special thanks to Gifted Education Advisor Esther Van Riper. Thank you. And then the second, the Westfield High School Choir will present A Night of Love Songs this Saturday, February 11th at 7 p.m. here in Cafeteria B in the high school. Tickets to the evening of solo, duet, and group performances by choir members are $15 for adults and $5 for students. The event is free for high school choir students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be on Tuesday, February 28th in Cafeteria at Westfield High School, beginning at 7 p.m. Superintendent Dr. Raymond Gonzalez and Business Administrator Patricia Ramos will provide the third in a series of presentations on the 2023-2024 school district budget. To stay informed, we encourage residents to attend the meeting or view it via the live stream or recording. The meeting will be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which viewers can access on the board tab of the district website. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, February 24th, also on the board tab. Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. We have a few items under our administrative report this evening. I'll start with a few, then we'll hand it over to Dr. Pinero to do his assessment update, and then I will be joined by Patricia Ramos and myself to be able to do the second of our installments of presentations on the upcoming budget. So to begin this evening, I do want to draw attention to the SSDS report summary, which is listed in the notes for the record. That is the safety data system report that is due by the New Jersey Department of Education to be certified for 2 periods throughout the course of the school year. The first period would constitute the first half of the school year from September to December, and then the second would be the report that would constitute the activity between January and the end of the school year. Included in this report, you'll notice in the notes for the record, are incidents related to violence, vandalism, substances, weapons, or HIB that has been confirmed in the district. Other incidents that may have led to the removal of students for suspension. The use of restraint or seclusion techniques, if those were necessary, we are required to log them and report them as well. And anything relating alleged harassment, intimidation, and bullying, trainings for harassment, intimidation, and bullying, or programs related to harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So if you get a chance, you could see the activity for the last several months in that report under notes for the record. In addition, this evening, I would like to just provide an update on our district goals. Throughout the course of the year, we are continuing to attend to the many needs of the school district, but we do not overlook the importance of our district goals that were adopted earlier in the school year. We had 4 district goals that were adopted this year. The focus of the first one was student achievement, and within the student achievement goal, the efforts of the administration really focused on developing and implementing consistent practices that serve to align our learning objectives and instructional practices across schools, content, and grade levels. So as the foundation for that work of trying to create this consistency, the administration, our principals, department supervisors, and the Office of of curriculum have been busy compiling lists and inventories of common school-wide programs, assemblies, field trips, extracurricular offerings, clubs and activities, in order to identify those opportunities where we could create greater consistency amongst our school-age population. We also are, in support of this goal, developing standard operating procedures around common district practices related to instruction and teaching. We want to make sure that everything that we do is certainly going to allow for flexibility and creativity among the classroom teachers, but we also want to make sure that there's common expectations among many of our basic principles and protocols. So that's the emphasis of our student achievement goal this year. Second in our list of district goals has been the development of our strategic plan. And as we've reported out on both at board meetings and in our district newsletter, we're certainly well on our way to develop the 5-year strategic plan. So we've had our in-person stakeholders for staff, students, and parents, and members of the community. We've had staff surveys, student surveys, and parent surveys to provide additional feedback. And then the Strategic Planning Council began meeting in November for their thoughtful and thorough discussions of what the next 5 years should look like for our students and staff based upon the district data regarding student learning, school processes, as well as the student stakeholder feedback that I had mentioned earlier. The council, which held its 4th of 6 scheduled meetings on January 30th, will meet again in the coming weeks ahead. The third goal, which is one that I think we've been hearing about for the last several months, has been focused around fiscal planning. And this goal really emphasized the need to provide clear, timely, and factual information regarding the 2023-2024 school district operating budget and the April 25th budget vote. We've established a budget vote portal on the district and school websites. We update it frequently and share information with the broader community when it becomes available. Myself and our business administrator have presented several presentations, both in the form of a board presentation, but also among various constituent groups, just to engage our community in as much fact-finding as well as information gathering as possible. As we continue to gather more and more information and get more and more detail from the state, we continue to add greater detail and specificity to our presentations. We also have a communication plan that outlines the various methods to be utilized, all in an effort to provide the clear, timely, and accurate information for our voters to be able to cast their ballots in April. And last but not least, our diversity, equity, inclusion goal for this year was a continuation of our prior year goal. And with this goal, the district continues its commitment to developing and deepening our DEI practices and programs. Some of the highlights include in the area of professional development, we've resumed our partnership with Kane University to offer graduate courses on the Holocaust and genocide study for teachers. We continue our relationships with nearby colleges and universities to assist in recruiting diverse staff while providing professional development for administrators on implicit bias when interviewing. We are sharing news of celebrations and observances and have increased our outreach to the community in a number of ways, including district website and social media, as well as a monthly newsletter. And in consultation with our DEI advisory members, we've also been able to share curricular and instructional resources on culture and heritage with our staff. In addition to our strategic plan, as I said, it's not the only thing we're doing. In addition to our district goals, that's not the only thing we're doing. So I do want to highlight some of the activity around International Holocaust Remembrance Day, as well as Black History Month activities that are underway this month. So on January 27th, we recognize International Holocaust Remembrance Day, with students and staff marking this important day with thoughtful lessons, discussions, assemblies, and special guests. These impactful classroom and school-wide experiences, which provided meaningful context to the district's Holocaust and genocide curriculum, included a partnership with the Holocaust Council of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West, New Jersey, to arrange visits by survivors of the Holocaust. Most recently, Eva Weiner paid a remote visit to the 7th graders in the classrooms at Edison to share her family's harrowing journey of escaping Nazi Germany in May 1939. 8th grade students experienced a 2-week interdisciplinary unit titled The Holocaust, What Hate Can Do, and this unit is taught simultaneously in the language arts and social studies classes. All of our intermediate school students are attending a special assembly from Living Voices, which combines live performances, historical photographs, and footage and discussion. The solo performance, called Through the Eyes of a Friend, is told from the viewpoint of a fictional best friend of Anne Frank. And in December, a traveling exhibit entitled Shadowlight, the Cattle Car, Stepping In and Out of Darkness, was set up on the high school's front lawn with students and staff cycling through this powerful, immersive Holocaust learning experience. Thank you to Rabbi Ethan Prosnit and Temple Emmanuel for sharing this experience with our students. In the month of February, we have a number of events planned for Black History Month. Elementary, intermediate, and high school classes are visiting the pop-up museum referenced earlier in our announcements at the Rialto Theater, entitled African American History in Westfield from 1720 on, and curated by the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Westfield. At Westfield High School, Blue Devil Television is doing an interview series on influential black members of the Westfield community. Elementary students are reading biographies, writing reports, and celebrating the many contributions of famous Black Americans. And kindergartners at Lincoln will read and connect to Dream Street, a picture book about a special neighborhood. These are several of the activities that highlight the work that's being done. Certainly are not exhaustive, but I did want to share that with the community. And last but not least, for this portion of our report this evening, I do want to highlight that this week, February 6th through 10th, is National School Counseling Week, and we expressed our gratitude to our caring and devoted school counselors for the year-round commitment to our students and staff. And additionally, on February 15th, we have National School Resource Officer Day, so we'd like to thank our officers, Colello, Johnson, and Riga, as well as our school security specialist, Frank Padovano, for keeping our schools safe and secure. So that will conclude my first portion of my report this evening. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Pinero up to the podium for him to provide a presentation this evening on the Start Strong assessment results, SAT, ACT, and AP testing report. Dr. Pinero?
Thanks, Ray. I need a minute to just process all those great things. That's a lot. And thank you for walking us through all that. So good evening, everybody. As Ray mentioned, I'm here to discuss the Start Strong assessments, SAT, ACT, AP. It's the third test report you've seen this year so far, and it'll be the last for the year, just in time for more assessments to start next month in March. The high school's graduation proficiency assessment is in March. If you are interested in seeing the full, as our student, Patrick's like, oh, that's right. Yeah, so that starts next month. Anyone interested in seeing the full table of all the different assessments, you can find that. Just go to curriculum on our website, and under curriculum, statewide assessments, and there it is. You can see the whole table. So, yeah, that's our cover page. So, yeah, we'll be talking about those assessments today, and in this order. So I'll walk us through the Start Strong design scope and a little bit of the purpose, talk a little bit about how we interpret those results, talk about academic supports that we provide for students. Say up front about Start Strong, so I kidded a little bit about how much testing that we've reported out on. But I think it's important to keep in mind that one of the prior presentations was on NJSLA, and that is a more comprehensive assessment. I'll point to some things in the next slide about how short. This is a very short. The Start Strong assessment is small. It's a chunk, and it's based on the learning from last year coming into the fall. So it's very useful, or I should say it's useful. But what we take a deeper dive in typically is the NJSLA, and as well as in-district assessments. NJSLA, if you recall that presentation a couple months ago, that's where we showed you there were evidence statements. We showed you how the teachers and the principals drill down into those, and then we come up with areas of strengths and some areas that we can focus on doing some support so that we could grow in. So this is a piece of that. But for those parents who are interested in the Start Strong reports that they got, we've had some good conversations about how this is one piece of many, and that, you know, the indicators themselves, if we look at those, you know, the levels are strong support may be needed, some support may be needed, less support may be needed. You'll notice that it always says support. What that means is the focus of this assessment is to identify areas that we can support our students, whether it be a lot or less or maybe more. So just backtracking a little bit there. The design of it. So as I said, it's smaller. It's a smaller test. The questions don't cover the breadth and depth of the standards that we see on the NJSLA. It doesn't support the same comparisons or inferences about student proficiency. So I guess that's my way of saying it's a different kind of assessment. Oh, yes, and so the tested grades for Start Strong are ELA, so our English Language Arts is 4 through 10 grades, and then math is 4 through 8, and then Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and then science are in grades 6, 9, and 12. Okay, so the great majority of our students that are identified in the Start Strong assessment are typically identified, in fact, we've seen this through 2 Start Strong seasons now, because we did it last fall as well. So our students that are receiving academic supports based on our longer-term model that we've had in place for many years, that would be our Achieve program for academic interventions. Our process for identifying students that way tends to align very closely. So the percentages of students that are in need of strong support is very close to the same percentage that we've identified over the years. So I think that says a little bit about the assessment, but also just wanted to let you know that those supports aren't new. We've had them in place based on collecting data over the years, and this is, again, another metric that lends itself to how we can help students and make sure that, you know, anyone who needs the supports can receive them. Okay, so here the next few slides will use stacked bar graphs to give you a sense of the overall performance, and then I'll show you some disaggregated data. To start, keep in mind the darker the purple, the deeper the purple, that's the less support needed. So the lightest on the bottom there, the lightest shade of purple, that's where strong support may be needed, and then there's some support may be needed in the middle. Again, that strong support needed percentage is pretty much what we see, what we've seen over the years as far as our intervention program is concerned. So now I'll break it down for you a little bit further. So that was the last slide was total pop. That was total population. This is 4th grade and 5th grade, and ELA is on the left and math is on the right. Same thing, since this is a visual representation, it's the percentages in the boxes don't necessarily line up exactly with the colors, because obviously that's meant to show you that like 2/3, let's say, of the population of ELA in 4th grade need very little support, so they did very well. But you know, the numbers are there as well. So again, 13% would mean strong support is needed, all the way up to then the 21 and 66% where those students do not need as much support. That's 4th and 5th grade, ELA and math. Oh, there's no science assessment at the elementary level. Remember I said 6, 9, and 12. 6, yeah. So this is 6th through 8th, ELA, math, and then there's science. Whenever you see 9 students or fewer, that's actually the default for one of 2 things. It either means that test wasn't given, and that's just a default language that the state system uses, or it means literally that in that particular group there were fewer than 10. students that might have been assessed. So if you see it missing, it means there were either not enough students or that test wasn't given. So example, science, there was no test in 7th and 8th grade, but there was one in 6th. Okay. So here's our population there in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, total population. Yeah, same, yeah. You might notice in this one, yeah, I'd like to call that out. So in grade 8 math, it seems like there's more support needed there than has been typical in the other grades for some of the other assessments. A factor that you've heard me mention before at the podium when we go over test scores is that in 8th grade, we have a large population of students that also take Algebra 1. So that percentage is based on students, 8th grade students who took the Math 8 Start Strong assessment, not algebra. They're folded into the Algebra 1 assessments. So that's not the total population of 8th grade the way it is in ELA, as an example. Okay, I can clarify more of that later if that wasn't clear. Okay, and then we go on to the 9th through 11th results. ELA, we only did 9 and 10. That's all the state requires there. And again, there's sort of that trend of, between 8, 11, 12% that might need supports. And then we have our math there. That's where you see the Algebra 1. So as an example, A1 means Algebra 1. That folds in a good chunk of the 8th graders as well. There's also some maybe factored into geometry. Algebra 2, geometry, and then there are 2 grades of science, 9 and 12. Okay. So next we disaggregate the assessments, or our reporting of the assessments. The first pair up at the top is female, male, non-binary, and ELA, math, and science. So you can see the percentages there, close, but as is typically the case, sorry, Patrick, the females edge out the males a little bit on that performance. And then we also have IEP and 504. Just to clarify, IEP indicates a student who is classified as having an individual education program or plan, and 504 indicates students who have accommodations but not an IEP. In the subgroup slides, 9, there's that. I just wanted to also remind you about the 9 or fewer means that we're in a population of 10 or more, so that's not reported. So those are, again, the percentages that we use to identify students who might be in need of some intervention. Here's more, the next 2 slides. One is ethnicity, and the next one is going to be English language learners and other demographics. So in these groups, we do recognize that there are some gaps among groups. And these gaps are in accordance, in accordance with our some of the goals that Dr. Gonzalez had talked about, we want to address these gaps. I mean, traditionally, there may be long-standing gaps, but they need to be addressed. And one of the ways we can do that is through an academic intervention program that is very comprehensive, very data-driven, and has the resources that it needs to be successful. So this is one thing that we're putting a lot of effort in. Dr. Weissman and a group of our administrators are applying for a grant that will give us some support in the framework to address closing those gaps through this idea of multi-tiered interventions. So we're really excited about that, and what all that really means in a nutshell, and then of course it's deeper than that, but Tier 1 would mean that there's some data-driven conversation and collaboration between the academic interventionist and the classroom. So the interventions are in the classroom. Tier 2, the interventionists get more involved, and the idea is that at each level we're doing everything you can to identify specific skill areas for students to be able to master that skill and then move on, sometimes out of the out of the need for those interventions. So it's a very comprehensive program. We have a program that is compliant and solid, but we want to have the best program. So stay tuned for that. And as I mentioned, there's also the English language learners. There's the current EL students as well as former. Then we have some numbers for economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Sure.
How do these results compare to, say, last year or the year before? Are you seeing more kids testing that they need more help, or is it less, or about the same?
It's very close to the same. I looked at that. Yeah. Last year was right out of the pandemic, and I'm not sure how much the test may have changed a bit, and there's not that much longitudinal data for me to feel like I should plug that in there. But I did look, and it's pretty much the same. It's closer than I would have thought, but yeah, they're very close. I asked today that we had some visitors from the county in today. So, when she asked, are there any questions that you have of us? I said, well, are we doing Start Strong again next year? And it hasn't been determined yet. So, that will help. Sahar.
Thank you. Thank you for this. So the Start Strong, this is the second year, right, that they've done it?
Yes.
Just the second year. So one of the things that stands out is our science. It seems to be consistently weaker. In some cases, the math is weaker, but I'm just curious to know what is the potential explanation.
Right. So, yeah, we've talked about that. A couple things. One is the science assessments have changed, not necessarily Start Strong, that's a new assessment, but there's been a lot of shifting of science assessments, a lot of different science assessments in recent years. So I feel like it's difficult for the teachers to really zero in on what might be indicated in those tests and then to adjust to them. But for the most part, that's one piece of it. Secondly, I think in some of the state data it's similar. So we and the state, need to look more into it. The science assessments are newer. Maybe that has something to do with it. But we're looking closely at it. We want to see the impact. During COVID, there was an emphasis on, and it was the right emphasis on ELA and math. That might have come into a little bit of play, is that maybe science received a little bit less, there was less opportunity for labs, less opportunity for hands-on learning. So that may all come into play. But overall, I think the science assessments, it's true across the board. But, yeah.
Wait, so you're saying that pre-COVID, our science numbers have always been lower than math and...
No, I didn't mean that.
Not on Start Strong, but on, for example, on the standardized testing that's required by the state.
Mm-hmm.
Have we had a disparity in terms of having lower science numbers on average?
No.
Okay.
Well, I have another question.
Yes.
The grant that you're applying for, is that going to focus on all three, science, math, and ELA, or is it one in particular?
Thank you. Good question. So this grant is focused on early reading. So it's K-1-2 reading. Some of the thinking behind that, as far as the state and the grant is concerned, is that early reading will help with reading math problems and also just future learning. So it is focused on that.
And would that be for the start of next school year, if you get the grant? Yeah.
If we get the grant, yeah.
He said, yeah.
I can feel him nodding behind me. Yes. Yeah. Now, that in mind, we have begun the process of implementing. It's just it would be great to be part of the cohort with Rutgers. But we're following the same model, and we've made progress in that this year. It takes a couple of years. We visited with other districts. It takes a couple of years to really get it up to the most effective level where you start to see everything from referrals even to come down and all that. But so it would be great to have it, but we're going forward with the same model that we would like to be part of a cohort with.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Is it a curriculum? Is it a...
It's professional development primarily. Mm-hmm. So it's professional development in the area of a model that works with the teachers, and both interventionists and the classroom teachers, mm-hmm. to reinforce what's done at each tier. So in this case, it would be helping the classroom teachers to anticipate at a level that the interventionists anticipate, how to set up data groups and leadership teams. So as an example, across the board, our elementary schools have developed professional learning communities, so that the idea behind a professional learning community is, to collaboratively look at circumstances and then adjust to them. Typically, it's data-driven, and so building that culture is important as the foundation for the next. But so the grant will focus in on that kind of professional development, and that's the big thrust of it. Of course, we would need more resources such as staffing and so forth, but mostly professional development and some software platform support.
And the skill set is reading.
Yes.
So
K-1, 2.
Right, so it's not, so it's professional development on strategies, with decoding and things like that, or it's more on assessment? I'm not.
Well, okay, so your part of the cohort is exactly drilling into particular data. So it depends which data tools you're using. They have theirs, so the cohort would use their certain model. So that's all part of what the prep work is for now, determining what those consistent tools are for determining where the students are at. So as far as which models we're using for literacy and all, that's all part of those discussions, and it's way too early for me to lay that out for you today.
Okay.
Okay.
Paul, looking at the charts, some data obviously very good, some a little more concerning. When it comes to strong supports, I think most of us here have an idea of what that might look like in terms of, really strong interventions. But could you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by some support might be needed and how that might play out?
Yeah.
Because that's a huge chunk of a lot of these categories.
Right. So again, the data for this is not something that there's in some cases 10 or 12, 14 questions on the assessments. That's not enough to make programmatic changes and all. So we kind of pull it together with other metrics. But overall, what I see in the middle and less support needed area, those are areas that would very unlikely a student in those areas would need any support. Would need like pull-out or intervention support. Those are the kinds of things that what we find in NJSLA can be brought to teachers, and then they have professional development, whether it be at in-service or department or staff meeting, where they address certain skills that may have been evident from the evidence statements in those. So we haven't, as an example, said this student received that rating and therefore we're going to screen them specifically for, we wouldn't do that with this amount of data. We would do that with our in-district tools, and then we would also consult NJSLA. But for a number of reasons, this isn't ready for that. It's almost like that third or fourth thing you might look at before, making a determination. It really would affirm or confirm a decision. It wouldn't be the catalyst for one.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that was a great natural break. Kent, I think you started off that whole question session, but that was now we would move on to talking about the high school assessments, SAT, ACT, and AP. So I'm glad we did to take that break to do those questions then. Okay, so annually, we'll see some perfect scores to come out of the SAT and ACT testing. And so here's just the cohort of 2022. So I focus as much as possible on one cohort so that, it gives us a sense year to year. So it's the graduating class of 2022. Gives us a sense, there's some longitudinal data that we can look at. So most of what I'm about to share with you is 2022 until we get to maybe AP, the class of 2022. So that's how our students did. We had 4 perfect scores in SAT Math. We had 1 in SAT Evidence-Based Reading and Writing. We had 3 in English ACT and 4 in ACT Reading. Okay. And here are the reading, math, and essay scores for SAT in comparison with the state and the nation. So I'll show you the class of 2022 first, then I'll show you a few years of that. So the section scores for critical reading and for math each range from 200 to 800. That's sort of the traditional SAT scoring that we're all familiar with. And in our case, Westfield is the top line there, 614, 622, and 6. Then there's the state, there are the state numbers, and then the nation numbers. The essay is scored from 2 to 12, so there's a possibility of it, 2 to 12 there. The range is 2 to 12. Okay, so here's a 5-year comparison. You'll see, I think that when you look at a large number of students, whether it be at the state or the nation or even Westfield, they might often perform at a similar level. So there's no ceiling, but we want to start chipping away at our consistency. You know, it's good to be consistent, but you know, we've ranked for over 5 years, Westfield critical reading 612 to 614, a couple of 614s in there. And then you see the state can be consistent too. It's a large number in the nation. But, you know, as always, really, Westfield outperforms the state and the nation. In this case, keep in mind too that when you look at SAT scores, it's a little different than looking at NJSLA scores at the state level. And New Jersey perennially is ranked, you know, across the nation as one of the top 2, 3, or 4 states. So I think if we're, you know, outperforming the state, that this says something. You know, New Jersey is a very strong educational state. Okay, and there's your math, and again, there's the essay. Okay. All right, so I'll share with you some ACT results. ACTs go from, they're on a scale of 1 to 36. And similarly, Westfield versus state and nation, Westfield outperforms, does well. When I show you the, you know, a couple years of data, you'll see the same kind of thing you saw at the SAT, that, you know, there's a consistency there. So there's 5 years, you know, 26 to 28 with 28 bookending 2018 to 22 in English. Math, 26 or 27. Reading. So you can see we're very consistent. So we've started to have conversations about, as I said, well, how do we, you know, what more can we do? It's good to be consistent and consistently very strong, but let's do more. Or let's see what we can do. I don't know, maybe we have hit the ceiling, but we don't talk like that. So it'll be fun to dig a little deeper into that.
Can I just ask, before you move on, just a quick question. So do we have a sense of how we compare to peer institutions? I mean, first I should just note that, you know, standardized tests, ACT, SAT have many flaws, many. So I don't think that they necessarily measure the quality of an education. Unfortunately, they do matter quite a bit for college applications. But I think the question is not so much how the state, I mean, it's good to know how we compare to the state, because, you know, it's relevant, but there's wildly varying levels of quality across the state because of so many school districts. So I think the more accurate comparison is how do we compare to Milburn, Scotch Plains, Summit, Chatham, you know, these Livingston, right? These schools that are essentially similar to our district in terms of demographics, socioeconomics, residency, et cetera. Because I think that will at least help us figure out where we are with our peer schools. So is there a way that we can get that information? I mean, I assume is it publicly available?
Well, it depends. So when you see magazines, whether it's New Jersey Monthly or US, they spend a lot of time pulling that information. Just as an example, U.S. News and World Report's rankings, you actually apply, like you give them the information, so they put it into their database, and it takes them, that's why they do it every other year. So it can be done manually. I'm not suggesting that we would need that much time to do, but we don't have a database that we can filter through with that at the moment. There are some commercial vendors out there that provide some DFG data, for example, but that's not the same as selecting the peers you might like. So we have a good sense of who our peer districts may be. We might be able to manually collect that.
I guess my primary point is not just standardized tests, but in general, I think it's more helpful if we identify what are we comparing ourselves to. I think the state is a starting point, but I think that if you ask many parents here, why do you pick Westfield to live in for the school district, it's a perception and hopefully a reality that it's of a certain level and it's among a certain level of quality schools that they see as peer institutions. And I'm somebody who thinks competition is healthy. And so I think it's just more helpful for us to know how are we comparing to those schools on whatever our measuring criteria are.
Right. Well, keep in mind, SAT is administered throughout the year multiple times, so there has to be like a magic, so is it the spring assessment, the May spring assessment? So at this moment, I'm not aware of something that can pull that together through an easy filter. Again, I think it would have to be manual, but we agree, so we've had these conversations. We agree we'd like to do more of that, and there's some massaging of the data that we can do through the College Board database, but that doesn't give you peer districts. But I hear your point there. We're looking into vendors that do provide that sort of DFG kind of information, but it doesn't spell out individual districts. It will tell you we know who the I districts are, for example, so that's a piece of it. So I'm going to do a video call with a vendor who can do that for us next Wednesday. And a few supervisors are jumping on because that's what they do. They like data as well. So we'll keep you posted. We understand how powerful that kind of data can be. Yeah. Okay.
Paul had a couple questions. When you look at these numbers that you have here, do we see a decrease in the amount of students that are taking the tests because many schools have now gone test optional? Or is it relatively similar to this year versus the past few years?
I think it's pretty much similar, Michael. I can confirm that with guidance, but I've not been in any meetings discussing, say, assessments and testing where that's ever been brought up. And I know that was something that people were talking about a few years back when ACT started gaining some, popularity, but now it looks like they're just taking both a lot, so ACT and SAT.
So when you say taking a lot, when you look at these numbers, is this the best score that they've taken? If they take, for example, the SAT two times and the ACT 2 times, is it the average or is it the best score that they've scored in each section?
It's not the average. It's what the guidance office and I believe even ranking kind of magazines select as the fall assessment, the one where the most students take that test. So you want to have the apples to the apples, so it's one test that's considered like the official SAT test. Let me say it differently, they don't average them. There's one that's...
So it's based on a single test date, it's not necessarily based, if some students didn't take it on that date, does that include them in this total or not?
No.
Okay.
Good question, thanks. Okay, so I think, so I walked through that one. And then I have some AP data. Apologize, it says 5-year summary. This is actually 4 years. This was what was available to me. So one thing that's good to point out, or that I think is showing some progress as far as trying to take it to those next levels. In 2018, we had 16 AP courses offered. We've always been very careful about balancing wellness and rigor. We want to offer a rigorous program of studies for our students, but we also want to be mindful of the fact that, taking 5 AP as an example might be a lot of stress, and we want to be careful about that. So a lot of thoughtfulness went into moving from 16 courses offered to 19. In fact, I remember it like it was yesterday that Maureen Mazarese, our former supervisor of guidance, they did a survey of other districts and found out who had what, and we talked a little bit with students to see which ones were of most interest. And while I can't rattle off which ones we've added, at the moment, you can see in the program of studies are full. So if you go to the high school program of studies, you'll see the full listing of all the AP courses that we offer. So 3 in those 3 or 4 years we've added. And then the traditional way of looking at success in AP scoring is the percentage of students 3 and above. That's what, any kind of ranking uses that magic number. So it's a 3, 4, or 5. I think it's interesting here that 2021 looks like that might have been a COVID blip, because you see Westfield High School scored under 90, and that is not typical. And even 2020 might have been affected a little bit. The state took a bigger hit, 12 percentage points, not 3. And globally, there was 8 percentage points. So I think there's a little bit of a COVID influence there. But nevertheless, as we've said quite a few times, that Westfield does a very nice job and above the state level as well as globally, because AP is global in this slide. Yeah. Yes.
Before you move on, sorry.
Yes.
So do we have a sense of who gets 4s and 5s? And the reason I ask is because you have to get a 4 or 5 to get college credit. I think 3 is passing, but in most universities, you have to get a 4 and a 5 to actually get college credit, which may or may not be the purpose that the student takes AP. I think a lot of them, or maybe their parents want them to take the AP for that purpose, to save money. So again, do we have a sense of who's getting the 4s and the 5s, and again, how that compares to peer districts? Because that would help.
Oh, absolutely. Really, yeah, we know the exact number of scores for each course, each section, exactly how they did. So that is an important part of the annual review that goes on over at the high school, and then what the supervisors look at. You can even look at programming, make sure so 2 or 3 things can come up when you look at numbers, and if something doesn't necessarily jibe with you, like, maybe it should be a 4.2 average in that particular class relative to other, well, then you look into it. Maybe we have to check the alignment of the curriculum a little bit more professional development. So those things are all really important. So we do look closely at that. It's hard. There's so much. I mean, there's pages and pages and pages, and then of course you can filter in different ways. You can filter by student group. You can filter by any number of things. So we can do all of that, and we do a lot of it.
Right. So I guess I have a request. Can you send the board these percentages for 4s and 5s? Because I just think it would be helpful for us to know, does it drop from 87? Does it stay stable around 87 or whatever, 90? Or does it drop significantly between 3 and 4, which is what is required for college credit? In some cases, you actually have to get a 5 to get college credit, but 5 is difficult to attain, but 4 is really the magic number for college credit.
Well, yeah, so we can talk at SIP, and you can participate as well, as far as, well, what do we want to look at? Because, like, as I said, you'll see a list of 4s, a list of 5s, and it'll be for each different course. But, so we can talk about how that, that can be filtered and looked at, sure.
Yep. Paul, I'd like to just follow up on Sahar's comment. She is correct that it is a 4 or 5 to obtain the college credit, and I think it would be very useful to see the trend from year to year on how many students are actually obtaining the college credits, so we get a better understanding. 3, in a sense, is you did a good job, but the schools will not necessarily carry it across, so we can get a better understanding of how students are improving or not improving from year to year. So I think that breakout of data would be helpful.
We may have trouble obtaining data on which schools are giving credit to which students.
I don't think that's what we need. We just assume that a 4 is eligible. It's not about the schools. It's more about how many of our students are actually getting 4, so that if it's available, are they getting college credit, or can they choose to get college credit?
Yeah, there may be schools, Brendan, that give it a 3, but I think the point is how many are getting 4 or 5, because those, in a sense, across most schools, I can't speak for every school, will give you the college credit, so we can see that trend of how many students are getting it.
So Paul, just to confirm though, SIP has been discussing this, and you do intend to have that report for us, correct?
Yes.
How many 4s and 5s the kids
Sure.
are getting, and also comparing the
Absolutely.
subject areas. Okay, so it is on, we have been talking about it,
Forthcoming.
just to be clear.
Okay. So, thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
So this is actually a great segue for us as we move into the next portion of our presentation, because the development of our 2023-2024 budget is obviously intended to be able to focus our energies on creating a budget that will allow the school district to have the sufficient fiscal resources to positively impact student opportunities and outcomes. So I think jumping off from our student assessment report into the budget preview helps to provide a nice backdrop. So this evening, what we're going to do is, as I mentioned, part 2 of our series of the 2023-24 budget preview. And as we did in the last cycle of budget development last year, each of our presentations are really intended to build on the prior one. So with each of the presentations that are housed on our website, you'll see the prior presentation attached to the current presentation. That way you always have the opportunity as a reader or an observer to be able to reference what had been discussed previously. I assure you we are not going to go slide by slide and review everything, but again, I just want to make sure folks know that it is available. And this is a perfect example of what I didn't want to do. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So part 2. This evening, what we are going to focus on is really going into a little bit more depth than we did last presentation. The first conversation will be really talking about how the first and second question are going to be allocated based upon the maintenance of the status quo budget as well as any additions. We'll then discuss a little bit more specifically some of the proposed budget inclusions based upon the conversation with the board at the last meeting. And then from there move into some of the data with more specific numbers. Once again, those numbers are still tentative as we are waiting on final release of state aid figures from the New Jersey Department of Education and the Governor's Office, but we do want to be able to provide some of our proposed and projected expenditure and revenue data and really use that as the backdrop to be able to provide a projected tax impact. I want to make clear that all of these proposals and projections are intended to provide a point of reference for everyone. These are not the hard and fast numbers. So in many cases, you're going to see scenarios that we'll present, but we want to be able to provide a little bit more depth and detail so that people understand what we're talking about in a little more detail. In the coming weeks ahead, we will receive the specific data from the Department of Education, but unfortunately probably not by the next board meeting. So we won't have the hard, fast numbers, unfortunately, to be able to share with the board or the public until the March 7th board meeting, at which time we'll be adopting the budget. But I think at this point, we'll have enough data, we'll have enough of the scenarios to have a sense and a direction from the Board of Education so that we will incorporate that data into our budget software and our spreadsheets over the next several weeks. And then last but not least, we want to continue to remind people about the details related to the election so that if there are any questions, they could certainly refer to our budget portal, but also to any of the members of the Board of Education or administration for assistance. And of course, our next steps. So let me begin just by really taking some of the conversation that we had the other meeting and put it into a little bit more specific visual. So as we had mentioned, in the course of an April budget vote, the public will have the opportunity to vote on the tax levy for the upcoming year that is necessary to support the budget that is being presented by the Board of Education and Administration. So in the case of the tax levy vote, the tax levy has a cap that is set on that amount from year to year. Typically, that cap is 2%. In other instances, we have the ability to increase the tax levy above 2%, and those adjustments are allocated when there are increases in enrollment or increases in healthcare that are warranted and defined by the state that allow us to identify the maximum tax levy impact that we could increase from one year to the next. So what that means is our first question in the budget vote for April will consist of our maximum tax levy increase under the cap, starting at 2% plus any additional adjustments. And today we will be presenting what that adjusted tax levy impact will look like. And in this bar graph, you'll notice even in the image that question number 1, that blue portion of the bar has already increased beyond 2%, which is an indication that that adjustment has been applied. I then want to point out that question 2 is going to consist of, for the Westfield budget, anything that doesn't fit into question 1. So if there are items needed to support the operation of our school district, the implementation of our academic and extracurricular and athletic programs, all of that is necessary to keep our district running. If it can't fit in question 1, then we need to ask the voters to vote on it as a separate proposal. And that's where you see question 2 come into play. And if you'll notice in this particular image, question 1 and question 2 is a combination of votes that will allow us to maintain our existing program for services and offerings. So to fit, as we've said, to fit everything we need into a budget vote, unfortunately, it will consist of 2 proposals. As a result of our last meeting, we also discussed as a board the opportunity to use the budget vote and use the opportunity to increase the tax levy beyond the cap to start to build programs and to expand offerings. And what you'll also see this evening is that we've included reference to those additional supports in this presentation, but also this graph. So that question 2 really represents 2 types of budget requests. 1 will be those items necessary to maintain our programs, and those additional supports, which I'll describe in the next few slides, that we are going to request as well. All of that represents adherence to the 23-24 budget priorities that we had discussed earlier. We wanted to continue to be able to present to the board and to the public a budget that will avoid really a negative impact, obviously, on students. We want to maintain our existing programs and offerings. We want to remain within our class size and course enrollment guidelines, but we also want to begin to expand programs and offerings. And I think in this bar graph, you'll note all of those priorities are certainly reflected in what we are proposing for this year's budget. So to get into additional detail, the first bullet obviously indicates what I've said, that the large portion of our budget really maintains our current staff programming services. But in addition to that, I do want to highlight in this slide and the next, the additional items that have been included into the budget for this coming school year. The first item is adding teaching staff to our English as a Second Language program. As our community of English language learners grow in numbers each year, we want to make sure that we provide them with a program that meets their needs, but we want to do so in their home school as required by the state of New Jersey. As it stands now, once again, our staffing allows us to provide a program, but this allows us to provide the most appropriate program and one that allows our students to stay in their home school as well as meet the requirements and the expectations for these English language learners. So additional teaching staff are required in order to provide those services in their home schools. We also are proposing the addition of academic support teachers to our intermediate schools and our early childhood learning center. So as Dr. Pinero had mentioned, there are individuals who continue to express the need for additional supports. We've referenced the multi-tiered system of supports that both the school district, but also the state is looking to expand in our schools. But in order to do that, it not only requires additional professional development and resources, but it requires additional bodies. And if you recall, in the era of the ESSER funds and the ARP funds, those COVID relief funds, we were actually able to introduce interventionists at the intermediate level that provided additional supports, academic supports to our middle level learners. Unfortunately, when those COVID funds dried up, we were not able to continue those needed services at the intermediate level. So this is an example of our opportunity, or seeking our opportunity, to return those academic support teachers to the intermediate schools. We also recognize that there's going to be a need for additional academic support teachers at the elementary school, but we currently have some staff at the elementary level. So in this first budget vote, we didn't want to add all of the additional academic support teachers at the elementary schools as well, in order for the board, the administration, and the community really to spread our needs across multiple budget years. But by adding these academic support teachers, it will be at the Early Childhood Learning Center in our pre-KK school, all the way up to our elementary schools, will allow us to have dedicated individuals who are going to be providing those academic supports to our students in those grades. We also see in the second bullet on this slide the addition of guidance counselors. I think at the elementary, middle, and high school, that was one theme that was consistent through all of our administrative requests, that we recognize the need to provide additional social, emotional learning supports, mental health, and wellness supports to all of our students, regardless of the grade level. And to do so, we needed to start to dedicate our counseling services by school. Currently, people may or may not realize that we're sharing counselors across schools in our elementary levels, which unfortunately doesn't provide the most optimal opportunity to address crises or just social emotional needs when they happen on a day that perhaps a guidance counselor may not be present. So by adding dedicated guidance counselors to the budget, we're looking to be able to provide each of our schools the resources they have when they need it. And with that in mind, we're also looking at the intermediate level and at the high school level the introduction of student assistance counselors, something that currently exists and was introduced or reintroduced to the high school a couple years back, and we're able to keep the individual in place for this year. But we're looking to add an additional student assistance counselor at the high school, as well as a dedicated student assistance counselor at the intermediate levels, at each of the intermediate levels. Once again, these individuals will supplement and support the existing school counselors by providing them with the resources, by providing our students with the resources to address their mental health programming and needs as well. All of these ads that you see listed here are those additional programs and supports that were referenced on that first slide. So I just want to make sure that when people are trying to make sense of that bar graph, this represents the additional supports portion that was listed. At the February 28th board meeting, I'm going to invite my colleagues up to provide additional details and background as to what an academic support addition will mean for our district, what having additional guidance counselors, dedicated guidance counselors, and student assistance counselors will mean for our district, as well as what a comprehensive program for our English language learners will actually look like as well. So we look forward to providing and presenting that at our next meeting. So now I get to hand off the presentation to Patty to go into some of the data, proposed data for the upcoming school year.
Okay, so now I get to go into the fun stuff. Got all the numbers. So I know the coming charts might be a little overwhelming when you first look at them, but they do entail all of the different options that are on the table now. Like Ray said, we don't know what our state aid is yet, so we're just trying to give everyone the best information that we have right now, with the hope that we get another $500,000 in state aid. Hopefully it's more. Last year it was more, so you never know. So the first slide is the proposed expenditures for 23-24. The column all the way to the left is the budget at cap. So that is the 2% plus the health adjustment that we were able to receive. That number is what is in the current state budget. That's what I'm allowed to put in. I can't exceed that number. Anything above that will have to go into what they call the second proposal, which is a second ballot question. That is where the numbers will change based on how much state aid we get in terms of the ballot. So you'll see the second question is all salaries and benefits, because as Ray just said, you can see what we're proposing is different programs of staff and their health benefits. And the maintenance that we're putting into that, the staff that currently exist that potentially may go into the second question, will also be staff with benefits. And there is some reasoning about why we're not putting other items into the second question. If you put in like a capital project or something like that into the second question, it doesn't raise your tax base going forward. It's a 1 year. So voters would have to vote on it this year, then they'll have to vote on it again next year, because it wouldn't raise our tax base. So it doesn't make sense to take a lot of expenditure items and put things like that into it. So we're trying to be very diligent with how we're going through the different courses of this. So as you can see, the budget, the first column, like I said, is the budget at cap. Then we have the budget at cap with the $500,000 increase in state aid. So you'll see the changes again there are to the salaries and benefits, because that's what we're adding on. The rest of the numbers are all staying the same. I can't move tuition or transportation into the second question. It has to be all non-mandated. And the last column all the way to the right is our total budget expenditures. At this point, we've had discussions with multiple committees. We've met with the principals, the cabinet members multiple times. We are feeling that these numbers in the expenditure column are pretty solid now. We're not really looking to come back with additions. I don't want to make a lot more changes. So now let's flip over and I'll show you the revenue side. So on the revenue side, the first column to the left, the first number, the local tax levy, that's the local tax levy at the adjusted cap. That's what will appear in question 1. Unless something changes with the health, if when we get additional state aid, if I move it over, that number might change slightly, but it probably won't. It's going to be pretty near that number. So that is what you'll see. That's why this first column doesn't say this is the first question, because the first question is only going to be the local tax levy. It's not going to be the total budget. That's what people are voting on. Then the next column shows the second question with flat state aid. So it's 2.2 million right now. If we receive an additional 500,000, it goes to 1.7 million. So this is really just to show you how the numbers will move based on the money that we get, and how it's going to slide into different columns within the budget. So like I said, the total budget is still the 123 million. It's just determining how much is going to be in that second question, and we're waiting on state aid for that. The tax levy is not, the base tax levy is not going to change. And now we're going to move to the next slide, which shows our potential tax impact. So back in the day when we used to vote on budgets, way back when, this was always the most popular slide. It wasn't the percentage of the budget. It wasn't, this is what everyone wanted to see. So the first column is the tax impact at the adjusted cap. So to the average taxpayer, which in Westfield, so the average home is assessed at $806,800. We get that information from the township. The average tax will be $10,819, which represents a $314 increase. What's important to note about this first column, if we had not moved to an April and we were in November, the public would not be voting on that number. That $314 would be what we were allowed to raise the budget by. That's the budget at cap. Above the cap, which is the second proposal, now they are voting on both pieces because we moved to April, but I think it's just important to highlight that. The second question, without an additional amount of state aid, is $218 to the average taxpayer for the year. And again, just to highlight, if it's $500,000, it drops to $170. So that number is going to fluctuate depending on how much we get. It's just to illustrate for you how that number will change as when we get that state aid number, because it is going to be such a tight turnaround from when we get the state aid number to presenting to you the tentative budget to vote on that night. And then the next two columns just show you the tax impact, showing with flat state aid overall is $532 to the average taxpayer, or if we get $500,000 in state aid, it'll be $484 to the average taxpayer. Then we move on to the next slide, and this is what Ray was saying. Here's this slide shows the actual percentages. So our tax at cap went to 3.61% when our health benefit number went in. And again, everyone in the state is open to use this adjustment to healthcare. And it's based on the fact that state health benefits increased by 15% last year. It's not open every year. So the last year that I think that it was eligible was in 2018, from what I could see. So it just depends on what state health benefits is and, how they open it to us. So we are able to do that this year. I have been in discussion with the county all through this process about where we're at, how everything's going. So we're in line with everything that the state and the county are allowing us to do. And then the additional second question right now with flat state aid is 2.12%. Then if we get the additional 500,000, you see the little kapow on the top, it drops to 1.66%. So just to make it a little flashier, and then, so are there any questions? I know I'm in the middle of the presentation, but on the numbers, because I know the numbers get sticky, so I don't want to.
Patty, so the top line number of expenditures is pretty much locked in stone at this point.
Yes.
123 million and change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the tax levy question 1 is set in stone.
Yes.
And then the only variable is the difference between state aid and the second question and how things are allocated.
The only way that the tax levy in question 1 would change if I get a decent, let's say I get $1 million in state aid and I bring all those salaries back with their health benefits, it might actually generate a little more of that adjustment, because I'll be moving more health costs into question 1.
Right.
But if it's not that much as 500,000, it's not going to make that big of an impact. So that's the only way it could possibly change. But it is getting to the point where we're getting locked in.
Right. Understood. And then with the adjustments, that's for us pretty much just healthcare. Our enrollment's stable, so we're not getting adjustments there.
Our enrollment has decreased a little over the last 2 years. I'm expecting it to be flat next year. But because of COVID, a lot of districts had that where it did drop in the last, not significantly, but it did go down.
So the health insurance waiver, or cap adjustment waiver is based off of the state health plan
Yes.
that we're not a part of.
No.
So we get to benefit from the rates that the state decides to set for their own plan.
Yes. So based on the fact that their plan went up by 15%, they'll allow an adjustment up to around that dollar amount, like if you're putting in. So it just is applying it to everyone because the people in their plan are having budget issues.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
And our health numbers were historically lower with self-insurance, but they have been higher since COVID. So it's not, it is something that we should take advantage of too, because last year, that's why we were in the budget situation we were in, was the health costs had gone up by so much after COVID. And there's really no say in when that's going to drop back down or what level it will drop back down to.
Thank you.
Patty, one quick question. In your expenses, where are utilities bucketed? Is that in the outside providers?
Yeah, I believe no, in cleaning, repairs, and maintenance.
Okay, so that would be electric, gas, water?
Yeah, it comes
Okay.
there. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
I want to, before you go to the next section about the election, just to go to the numbers. So, one, I want to point out how modest we're being. We're being very, very, very conservative in what we're asking from the district, or from the residents. And I just want to highlight that because effectively, we're only asking for a 2% increase, possibly only a 1.66% increase from what we would legally be able to ask for if we didn't go to the April election, right? So I just think that's important for the record, is this is a very conservative, small ask. And if we translate it, again, just for those who are watching live or who will watch later, if we don't get the $500,000 in state aid, we're effectively asking, on average, every household to pay $44 more a month, which is a very small amount of money. So we're asking for a little. But I just want to highlight for those who, even the skeptics, is, we're going to be paying for academic support teachers. So this is to ensure that our students in intermediate school, in particular in middle school, are not left behind because of COVID loss of learning. And we just saw the Start Strong data that shows we have a problem in science and possibly in math. And also we have some disparities along racial lines and economic disadvantage differentiation. And then the other highlight, which I really appreciate Dr. Gonzalez mentioning this, is that we don't have guidance we don't have a full-time counselor in our elementary schools. I think those of us, when we remember elementary school, everybody had a counselor, at least one counselor that was just there in case anything happened. So we're really just plugging in holes. And then finally, I'll speak as a parent of 2 high school students at Westfield, is the dearth of guidance counselors. How many students do we have in almost 2,000? Yeah, we have 1,800. We have one of the largest high schools, I think, in the state, and we do not have we don't have enough guidance counselors. So I just want to put on the record that we're really just plugging in holes as opposed to getting to that point where we can fill in the gaps that were caused as a result of 10 years of austerity and then also growing, which hopefully we can do it in the future. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Patrick, but whatever, if you would like to comment as a high school representative in terms of the role of having more guidance counselors, because you're a senior now, so you've experienced that need.
Yeah, no, I would totally love to add on to that, especially coming as a senior. I just finished up applying to colleges and all that other stuff, and I think the fact is that the guidance counselors at Westfield High School are spread too thin, and I think there definitely needs to be more guidance counselors, and I think that's a common view amongst all students. And I'd also like to add on to the need for the student, the student advisory counselor. She, the one currently does an amazing job. All the students love her. Everyone's always in her office because she does an amazing job. And I think adding another one onto the high school staff will be a great addition and help all of our students struggling with mental health issues.
I just want to speak on behalf of a few of us are educators also, in addition to the student point of view. Being in the school system right now and seeing across the state, schools have lost interventionists and counselors and behaviorists, and it has been a struggle for teachers also to have to take dual roles in those areas. And to me, I was very pleased to see that this was the forefront of what was going to be proposed for our budget, because the students definitely not only need extra help academically from what they've been through, but also mentally, socially, and the teachers need help as well. They're struggling too, and this could take some of the pressure off of doing both roles in the school for the kids.
So I'll add by proxy. I'm the liaison to the parent teacher council to the high school. And when I first joined their meeting, they said, can you present on a few things? And I said, well, I'd rather you tell me. if each of you, there must have been about a dozen folks there on the council, which is extremely active. I said, if each of you had a wish list, what's the first thing? Give me your top 3 priorities for what you'd like to see based on your experiences both on the council and with your own students. I don't know that there wasn't one of those dozen that didn't have guidance at the top of their list. And if it wasn't at the top of everyone's, it was certainly number 2. So this, we've gone all the way around. We've got students, we've got educators, we've got parents all recognizing a significant need. And I can't really think of a better way to start the process of advancing programs, not just supporting them, by addressing a need that is across the district, across the schools, across across the different grade levels. We're catching up to some extent, but in doing so, we're definitely adding to services. It also proves a bit of a point, to Patty's earlier point about ensuring that we had some recurring expenses, in the second question, as opposed to one-time capital expenses. We saw that part of the reason we're down a few counselors is because those had been funded in the past by COVID funds. And when the COVID funds go away and you have a recurring position, it just doesn't work, right? So the position has to go away. So all the more reason to put these items in a recurring question that will increase the base over a long period of time, such that we do not have to keep adding this same thing back in again and playing the same game. It's one thing to say, well, do you want to add, a set of computers or a security system or something like that. It's another thing to put guidance, which is such an important factor here, as something we have to ask for every year. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm very happy to see, certainly the responsiveness to, to certainly what folks have been clamoring for, but also to put it in a position such that we don't have to go through this again, and that these become permanent fixtures. Again, a starting point, but a permanent fixture nonetheless for what we're doing.
Building on that, after hopefully not too many years of a second question, hopefully we'll be in a spot where the district will be able to sustain itself on the allowed increase. We've seen charts the last couple meetings as to the difference in tax levies over the years and the deficit that's created versus the pre-2010 switch to November elections. We'll never catch up to where we were. If we went to 6%, it would take us over 100 years to make up that difference. And if we stay at 5%, it'll take us 400 years. Just to catch up to the tax levy difference. Compounding interest is complicated. But yeah, if we can get to a spot where we don't have to keep asking 2 questions, that's an ideal scenario. It'll take us a couple years to get there, but that's my hope with this whole process.
Okay. I think it is important to note that I have been talking to some other districts, because now everyone's really, we're way ahead in this process because we're doing the April vote, but people have started to put their numbers in and are going, oh no, we're over. Even with the health adjustment, we're still over. So they're now cutting. So it's not, it's just like you guys have talked about for the last 2 years, it's going to happen to everyone. It's not just here. So other districts are now starting to feel that way. Oh, I'm over by, $1 million. What am I cutting out? So they're in the cut process, where Westfield was just a leader in that, and unfortunately went through that earlier than some other districts, but it is happening. Even with the health adjustment, other districts are hitting that this year.
And just piggybacking on that, the experience has been qualitatively different this year. Working with the administration to start talking about how can we build our programs, provides hope, provides excitement and enthusiasm. Having conversations about what we can do versus what we can't do certainly provides a level of energy that we haven't had the opportunity to experience. So that when we come to the board and the administration and the Board of Education and the public, we want to make sure that we present a fully funded yet fiscally responsible budget. We want to make sure that it represents the hopes and dreams, but we have to do so in a very fiscally responsible way. This is our first time, so I appreciate the acknowledgement that it may seem modest, but we don't want to go out and risk the any of these important endeavors, but we do want to recognize that it is an opportunity for now the community truly to weigh in and be a partner with us in this, and we don't take that lightly. So I appreciate all the recognition by the board, and I do want to just thank all the administration for their work, time, and consideration in helping to come to agreement and consensus on how we could do this together. So thank you for all of those comments. Just to continue with the presentation, really round us out, what you'll notice, again, is we're including several of the slides that we've had before. So for the remainder of the presentation, you'll see the updated slides regarding the budget election. So now, our first question, the general fund tax levy will be at that 3.61 adjusted cap, which we had mentioned earlier. And then the second question will be any expenditure over the adjusted tax levy cap that will allow us to maintain class sizes and include any program enhancements. So we're seeing, again, what can't fit in the first gets added to the second, and any additional enhancements on top of that. As you'll note, with every presentation, we want to remind people that if both questions pass, we move forward. However, if the first question fails, then the first question and the first question only would go to the town council for their review and possible cuts. The second question, if that were to go down, unfortunately, any personnel or programs in that question would be cut from the budget with no ability to reallocate using existing funds. We would have to seek those opportunities for the following year.
Ray, can I ask a question?
Of course.
The part where you say the first question, the budget, then it goes to town council.
Yes.
And possible cuts.
Yes.
So just because this is new to me financially, so they don't have to cut anything? They can approve the budget the way it is?
They can. I mean, there's no requirement that they have to, but if the public votes it down, then they've expressed that they do not support the expenditure.
Yes.
So I think that would be something that the town council would have to weigh, but certainly it would be something we would hope to have some opportunity to share and provide influence over.
There is a process. If it was voted down, there'd be a lot of information that we would have to provide to the town, so they wouldn't just take the tax levy and say, oh, take off this much money. We would be providing details of the budget to them so they can hopefully thoroughly go through it, and if they were to make cuts, make them in a way that, they felt comfortable with. It wouldn't just be an overall. Yeah. We would be providing all that information.
Patty, I have a question. So the second question is where the guidance counselors and the interventionists are in the second question.
Yes.
So based on this, where they can't be reallocated, so if the second question fails, those positions.
If the second question fails, we will not be getting those positions, and we will also be losing positions depending on how much state aid that we receive.
Right, and we
We'll be
can't
losing
reallocate,
existing.
so those
We cannot
positions would be.
reallocate. They're gone for the year. The only way to get them back.
Losing existing positions?
There are existing
Yes.
positions still in the second question.
Okay.
Because
Are we
the
going
whole
to-
budget, the whole status quo budget does not fit.
Right.
Even within the 3.61%. So part of that is current existing staff members will still be in there. We're still going through that because we don't know how much state aid that we're going to receive. So we don't want to present.
Will that be
final.
presented before the vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because by then I'll have the state aid number, so that'll be what's going to be on there.
So people will, the voters will know exactly what staff would need to be cut if that second question wasn't approved.
They will know what positions will be cut. When you
Yes.
say exactly, they're not going to
No.
go to the person.
No, the
No.
positions,
But
I
yes, they would
understand.
definitely know the positions, yes.
The other question was that 3.67, that if we were still in a November election, that 3.67 wouldn't be voted on, correct?
No.
That would be the number?
That would be the number that you would be able to approve as a board, and the budget would just be
Correct.
passed.
Other districts, do they have the same number?
No, it's based on your health expenses. And so some districts, if they changed health plans and their number went down, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of this. Most districts are going up, but it is a choice whether or not to use this.
Okay.
So it's not required by the state, so some districts could choose not to take this adjustment and stay at the 2%.
And that, if you recall, in prior years, is what would be referred to as banked cap.
Yeah.
So when districts didn't use the allowable waivers, then they had 3 years to be able to use those waivers before that sort of opportunity would expire. In the prior presentations, you've seen our tax levy increase for the last 10 years sort of hover around 2%, but every now and then we'd have the blip. Those blips represented those years, and I think those who've been on the board would remember those would be the years where those adjustments were available, and the board appropriately, I would say, and responsibly exercised those waivers to increase the tax levy and thus the revenues available to support the budget. The one thing I also want to add, because I did mention the addition of ESL teachers, they are not in the second question, and the reason they're not in the second question is because our ESL program is a mandated program, so we want it to be consistent with the expectations that, are required by the federal and state laws that are mandated programs for special education, and our English language learners remain in the first question. Okay, as I mentioned before, our priorities still guide the work that we're doing, so I always want to make sure that we end with a commitment to these priorities and look forward to continuing to bring these priorities via the budget to the board in March. So last but not least, I just want to end with just an overview. Each presentation, we do want to give you what the future holds. So on February 28th, we will provide an overview of the program enhancements, as I had mentioned before. So we will have our administrative colleagues for our intervention and academic support program, our counseling program, as well as our English as a second language program present to provide an additional overview. On March 2nd, state aid figures will be released, and that will allow us to then incorporate and really finalize our numbers so that by March 7th, the board will have the opportunity to see those final numbers and vote on those final numbers so that we could then submit the budget to the county office of the Department of Education as required. By March 28th, we'll have received the review by the Department of Education that will allow us then to present the public hearing of our budget and our vote by the Board of Education that will then compromise what the ballot questions will look like. So everything that we see on March 28th will then be what is presented to the public for a vote. The ballot questions, question 1 and question 2, will be revealed at that time with the appropriate wording, and then from that moment on, we will continue with our communication and presentations in both in-person and virtual forums in order to ensure that every member of the public has a chance to hear about the work that's gone in to the development of this budget and to answer any questions that they may have. Ultimately, with the April 25th election day being the day where individuals will vote for the members of the Board of Education as well as the public vote on the budget. So polls open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on that day. So I'll leave you with our very subtle logo, which reminds everyone to express their voice and exercise their vote, but more importantly is to educate yourself on what is going into this budget vote by checking out our April budget portal via the QR code and the URL listed. So I want to thank the Board of Education for their feedback, their time and consideration and support, as this is a very difficult endeavor, but worthwhile endeavor, I think, for all the students in this community. So that concludes our presentation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Patrick, do you have a report for us tonight?
I will be giving my report at the next Board of Education meeting.
All right, thank you. Committee reports. Curriculum?
Sure. SIP met on February 1st, 2023. We've done a lot of what we saw in the SIP report here in these presentations, so this won't be very long. So we previewed the testing report for Start Strong, SAT, ACT, and AP that Dr. Pinero presented this evening. We also discussed preliminary budget numbers as they pertain to our curricular and guidance programs. Those specifics of these are still under discussion. We are anticipating, again, as we saw in the presentation today, enhancements to both the guidance and ESL programs, in addition to maintaining our current staffing and programs. And that, again, is provided both budget questions are approved by the public. Again, some of these enhancements were discussed during tonight's presentation. Our next SIP meeting is scheduled for March 2nd. Today we have 3 items, A through C, up for approval. The first are curriculum for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade mathematics, algebra and pre-algebra, accounting, television production 1 and 2, and child growth and development. All of these curriculum are on for second reading. Second thing is 2 field trips, one for a trip for Tamaqua's 4th graders to the museum at the Rialto for African American history. That was again discussed in the announcements. And the second is a trip for Wilson students in grades 1 through 3 to visit the post office in Mountainside and meet its postmaster and find out how the mail is delivered. The third is the approval of 12 student teaching and intern candidates for the 2022 and 2023 academic year.
Any questions for Rob?
I had a question. So you said there was, what were the 2 different math courses? This is for 7th grade or for 6th grade?
It's for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the general mathematics curriculum, and also the algebra and pre-algebra curriculum. So basically the entire intermediate school math curriculum being updated, which was voted on last meeting, but again, this is second reading because we do it twice.
And math is an area in middle school where a student can test into an advanced math class starting in 7th grade, even if they're not in the gifted program, correct?
Correct.
Right. Do you know if we have a similar program for science or ELA for middle school?
I don't think we do.
We
no.
don't, okay. Maybe that's something to think about. Thanks.
Sure.
All right. Mike, do you have finance and facilities?
Yes. So we had our finance meeting on Friday, February 3rd. Discussed a number of topics. We reviewed the 2022-2023 current budget. Continue to monitor transportation costs, which are remaining high given the environment. But health insurance is projected to cost less versus the amount budgeted this year. The district did receive $388,000 for FEMA money for reimbursable costs that we incurred during COVID, and we're going to allocate that to the capital reserve budget. Then we went on to start discussing the 2023-2024 budget. Mary Ann McGann, who's leading our communications effort on this, outlined our whole communication strategy to ensure everyone's informed. It's going to be a multi-pronged strategy, which will include meeting with towns, various groups around towns, PTOs, and other organizations. You're going to see emails, newsletters, social media, and presentations like you've seen this evening to just inform voters about the budget and what they're going to be voting on, so they're informed. Board members also during the meeting provided various recommendations in different other areas that we can reach out to, many of which Mary Ann already had covered, so she is very much on top of that. I won't go through all the details of the 2023-2024 budget development, but we did discuss, just as we outlined tonight, what in the second vote, what would be included within the second vote, and how many employees would be in that second vote budget, including the interventionists, and I have it here. Okay, the interventionalists, the elementary guidance counselors, and the SACs at the intermediate and high school levels. We had a brief discussion on pilots, in regard to the board negotiating the original pilot agreements. As you may or may not be aware, pilot revenues are currently divided up with 95% going to the township and 5% to the county. If this was taxed as normal, if it's taxed as normal tax, we would get our typical 60%. So the town currently only has one authorized pilot agreement for the Westfield Crossing development, which was entered into in 2021. They anticipate their first payment from that pilot to be in 2024, but they can't guarantee that. The township also said that at least part of these pilot payments will fund the Edison Field project debt service. The town is in talks about a pilot program for One Westfield Place, but no agreements have been made as of yet. There is an ability for the township and the Board of Ed to use the pilot money together. We're exploring forming a committee of council members and board members that would discuss the potential use of the pilot money going forward. So we're monitoring what's going on with One Westfield Place, and we want to get in front of the town with a committee so that we can explore and get a portion of that pie that we can use to enhance programs going forward. What we're also going to be approving, an initial payment out of the capital reserve budget is for the Roosevelt School facade. There were engineers in the building on January 28th evaluating it. They cut holes in the beams to looking about how they can address the problem. At the time of the meeting, we were waiting for the report. I don't know if you got any update on that, Patty?
I do. They're working on the proposals now to move forward with the work this summer. So they're just coming up with how the project's going to be phased in over the summer and what the look of the facade is going to be. So they're going to come up with a couple different proposals to us for that. But the building is safe. It's just beams along the top where the parapet is. And because it's an older building, it's 1926, and that terracotta facade had different requirements when it was put in than if you were to do something like that today. So that's why the age of the building, we're having issues with it.
So we should have the final report by the next facilities meeting that we can determine how much we need to budget?
Yes, I'm hoping to have the architect at the next facilities meeting also.
And because of that unexpected work at Roosevelt, we are putting the HVAC Phase 2 budget. I said that wrong. It's not really unexpected work. We want to address it to make sure that, while Patty just said everything is safe, that it doesn't further deteriorate, and we're addressing the issue in a more expeditious fashion. So we've just put the HVAC portion on hold temporarily so that we can get that addressed before it does become a safety issue. And we're going to conduct an RFP for the architect in spring 2023. That's my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike? All right. And policy, personnel, governance.
Our last meeting was on February 2nd, and we reviewed policy 3218, which is the use, possession, or distribution of substances. It's a mandated policy. We reviewed it, and there were no recommended changes made. However, it was discussed the importance of reviewing it, the administration reviewing it, and then reviewing it with the staff as well. Tonight we will be putting up for first reading policy 3144, which is certification of tenure charges. During our audit of our policies, we found that this policy, along with the dating violence at school, were missing, and we're recommending adopting the Strauss-Esme version. Our next meeting is March 2nd, and that's it, really. I don't know if you have anything to add, Saul.
I'll add one thing. We did have the policy for certification of tenure charges. It was just slightly out of date and did not match up with the model policy we have. The other regulation was accurate that we do not have that currently.
During the personnel section, we did a high-level mid-year, we went over the mid-year personnel review of non-tenured staff at a high level, and we took the opportunity to update the job descriptions for both the payroll supervisor and the supervisor of pre-K through 12 special education.
All right, any questions for personnel, policy, governance? All right. With that, I'm not going to open public comment. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda action items only. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, the specific action items they're commenting on, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designee, not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey, and the board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to all items raised during this public forum, all public comments will be considered. Each speaker's statement will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes in duration.
Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. I can hear me better now. On the finance agenda tonight, you are deducting a little over $100,000 to fix the facade of Roosevelt Intermediate School. That's in addition to, I think it was about $50,000 in the last meeting. I support the use of funds to fix safety issues. It sounds like that's what's happening here. I'm just wondering when the similar amount of funds is going to be deducted, or any funds for that matter, to conduct an independent investigation into the overdose that occurred at Roosevelt School with an outside impartial third party. I think that's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. All right, seeing nobody else come to the podium, the first public comment session is now closed. There will be a second session at the end of the meeting. I ask the board to approve the minutes of the January 17th, 2023 board meeting, the January 30th, 2023 special board meeting, and the January 17th, 2023 executive session minutes. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. And Sahar, governance?
I'd like to move item A under the governance section of tonight's agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been seconded by Kent. Betty?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Minaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelen,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Personnel?
I'd like to move items A to U under the personnel section of tonight's agenda. Can I have a second? Second. Thank you, Layla.
All right, it's been seconded. Dr. Gonzalez, do you want to address any retirements tonight?
Excuse me. So tonight I'm announcing the retirements of 2 staff members who have given a total of 48 years of service to Westfield students. Since 2000, Lynn Krause has been a 3rd grade teacher at Wilson School, a respected grade level leader for more than 20 years. She and her colleagues have created meaningful learning units that challenge and support 3rd graders. Lynn's emphasis on organizational skills and routines provide her students powerful lifetime skills. While strong in every area of instructional practice, Lynn's passion is literacy development. She presents writing and reading workshops that deepen students' understanding and sharpen their critical thinking skills. Lynn was one of the original members of Wilson's tutorial program and is excited every year by the success of her after-school learners. For 25 years, John Stassi has been an integral member of the Social Studies Department at Edison Intermediate School. As both a 7th and 8th grade teacher, John has created a growth mindset in his classes where students have the opportunity to take risks and learn from mistakes as they explore primary and secondary sources. He has partnered with language arts colleagues to utilize writing and readers' workshops techniques into his own classes to increase students' understanding of informational texts and thesis statements. John has been a generous mentor to new members of the department and enthusiastically supports extracurricular activities, including serving as the sound manager for Edison Spring Musicals. We wish both Lynn and John a happy and healthy retirement.
If I might comment real quick. I had John Stacy as my 8th grade history teacher. Still remember many lessons from his U.S. history class. And this board recognized him in 2019 as the Optimist Teacher of the Year for Edison. Just want to make sure that that gets out there as well.
I also wanted to comment on Mr. Stacy. 2 out of my 3 children had Mr. Stacy for social studies, and there was not a complaint to be heard in my house. They loved him. They loved his class. I told them that he was retiring, and they were so sad to see him go. So I think it's really important when you have that relationship with your students that they feel so positively about you. So thank you, Mr. Stacy.
All right, Patty?
Sahar Aziz,
Here, yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Layla Morelli. Yes. Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz.
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mike, Finance and Facilities?
For Finance and Facilities, I ask the board to consider for approval items A through D. We have a second? Oh, Kristen? There are a couple of donations I would like to highlight. From the Wilson School PTO, we received a donation of $190.49 to purchase library supplies, book covers, label protectors for the Wilson Elementary School Library. Thank you. For the Westfield School Boosters Association, we received a donation in the amount of $1,610 to purchase backpacks for the Westfield High School girls soccer team. Thank you. For the Westfield Boosters Association, we received a donation of $4,070 to purchase a Jugs football passing machine for the Westfield High School football team. Thank you. For the Westfield Coalition of the Arts, we received a number of donations for $84 to pay for professional development in graphics and user interface design to be taken by a member of the Westfield High School faculty, a donation of $840.50 to assist with the transporting of the Westfield Elementary School students who were chosen as part of the children's choir that will perform at Carnegie Hall, a donation of $1,000 to purchase in support of the Westfield High School Chamber Orchestra, All City Orchestra, and Jefferson School Orchestra, and finally, a donation of $4,000 to purchase equipment needed to update the speaker system used by Westfield High School Marching Band Blue Devils. So we're very thankful to the Westfield Coalition for the Arts for those donations. Do you have any questions for discussion? Okay, Patty, can we vote?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Layla Morelli. Yes. Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. Policies?
I'd like to move item A for first reading under the policy section. Can I have a second?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
I'd also like to move to approve for second reading the policies under B, items 1 through 15, and C for second reading. Do I have a second?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. Curriculum?
Sure, I'd like to move items A through C under the SIP section of the agenda. May I have a second?
Second.
Ken?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I ask the board to note the notes for the record. Any unfinished business? Any new business?
Brendan, I have something.
Okay.
It's in regard to, we've heard a lot of discussion this evening about the election and the budget, and I just want to make an announcement that as my second term as a member of the Westfield School Board nears its conclusion in April 2023, I have made the decision to not seek re-election for a third term. Serving as a member of the Westfield School Board has been a truly enlightening experience. During my time here, I've been fortunate enough to gain the insights into the remarkable teachers, staff, and administration who make this district such a special place. Their unwavering dedication and hard work are a testament to their commitment to serving our students. Many people questioned why I would want to join the school board. My answer was simple. I believe I have valuable contributions to make and a desire to maintain and grow the high standards of the Westfield educational system. It's now time for others to step up and make a difference. Participation in community service in any capacity is crucial for the growth and development of our town. The Westfield School Board is indeed a fresh perspectives from young families to help shape its future. If you're interested, I encourage you to consider running for a position on the board in the April 2023 election. If you have any questions regarding the board or the time commitment involved, please do not hesitate to contact me via my board email or via Facebook. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for your service.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other new business? Liaison reports?
I have two. I attended the Washington PTO meeting last Thursday, and they are hosting their math and science night tomorrow, actually, from 6 to 7:15, and then they're hosting their second annual multicultural festival on March 25th from 4 to 6, and they were really excited because Tamaqua also hosted one this year, so it's starting to catch on, which is wonderful. And then I'd also like to commend Dr. Gonzalez and your leadership team on your work on the budget and all of these presentations. There were a lot of questions at the PTO meeting regarding the budget, so I'm going to go back and share this presentation with those community members because I think it'll answer a lot of their questions. And also, I didn't get to say this earlier, not part of my report, but I should say how happy I am too that the emphasis is on mental wellness in the budget. It's very exciting. And then also the Municipal Alliance, I attended the Poster Palooza, and I would like to echo tonight's announcement and congratulating our two Westfield students who were honored during that meeting. And then also just to highlight that the Westfield Dream Team, the high school Dream Team, is the one that coordinates that, and one of their goals for next year is to try to increase Westfield student participation. Each year, annually, we have a lot of Holy Trinity students that participate, and we don't have nearly as many Westfield students, so that is a goal for next year. That's my report.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other liaison reports tonight? All right. During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designate. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey, and the board bears no responsibility nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during this public forum, all public comments will be considered. Each speaker's statement, again, will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. If you'd like to address the board on any topic, please come to the podium.
Is this on? Yep. Gary Morris, 405 South Avenue. As many of you know, New Jersey has become the first state in the country to require public schools to teach media literacy to K through 12 students as a way to combat misinformation. I think this is awesome. This is something, as my kids were growing up, I would do this all the time. Watch TV, show them how to identify things that are not, that are opinion and not factual. As a public service, I would like to teach the first lesson tonight regarding social media misinformation. I saw a retweet a little over a month ago by one of the Westfield Board of Ed members. It depicted an edited clip of several police officers arresting a man in a wheelchair. This incident occurred in July of 2020, over 2 years ago. I did my own research and found some important facts. It took me all of about 5 minutes on Google, and these facts were conveniently omitted in the tweeted story. The man in the wheelchair was violently interfering with officers attempting to do their jobs. The man punched an officer in the face, and the man attempted to take a baton from an officer. A loaded gun was also found in the backpack of the man in the wheelchair, who was also an ex-con. His possession of the gun was therefore illegal. A misleading retweet of an old story like this can very easily create undue animosity and distrust of the police. Let me remind you, there are students in the school district that have parents that are police officers. This is not fair to them. Let me also remind you that an officer recently administered Narcan to an overdosing Westfield teacher, very likely saving the teacher's life. As a lawyer, as a professor, and as a board member, you need to do better. This lesson regarding social media accuracy was provided by me, completely free of charge, budget neutral. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. I want to start by saying thank you to Mr. Beelan for your service on the Board of Education. You've always seemed like a very moderate voice on the board and had the best interests of all students of Westfield at heart. Thank you. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but Dr. Gonzalez, I was listening to the live stream and some of your remarks compelled me to come out here. So Dr. Gonzalez, it was heartening to hear you list all the specific recent efforts you're making to combat anti-Semitism through education. You mentioned International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th. I also observe this day. It's a day to remember the horror of the murder of 6 million Jews and others by the Nazis, and the day reminds me personally of the importance of the State of Israel as the ancestral homeland and refuge for the Jewish people. 2 days after IHRD on Jan 29th, I also read the article entitled "Schools Must Do Better Teaching the Holocaust," posted by fellow Westfield resident and published author Brad Schaefer. In his article, he cited troubling millennial and Gen Z survey data from the U.S. Millennial Holocaust Knowledge and Awareness Survey, which was the first 50-state survey on this topic for the demographic, that showed the following troubling statistics. 63% of all national respondents did not know that 6 million Jews were murdered, and 36% of those who were aware of the genocide thought the number was closer to 2 million or fewer who perished. Even in New York, with its large Jewish population and home to the most Holocaust survivors outside Israel itself, nearly 20% of survey respondents believe that Jews actually caused the Holocaust. It's unbelievably hard to believe that people could think that. Mr. Schaefer also said, quote, "Our education system has failed a generation. It is time to teach history again. The classroom is not a venue to force grievance and disdain for their own great nation upon captive and impressionable minds. In telling such an important and shameful chapter as the Holocaust, we remind the next generation that no people are immune from its evil machinations," end quote. These survey results indicate that on a national level, our education system has failed the last 2 generations. Westfield must do more to make sure that the current generation, our children, can answer this survey accurately. Dr. Gonzalez, I'm hopeful that your list of actions will have that result. I ask that you consider if it's enough. I'm concerned, however, that one member of the BOE's personal/professional actions signal that this might not be a shared value. For example, coincidentally, on IHRD, January 27th, VP Aziz was attending and speaking at the AMPNJ conference entitled Liberating Palestine, the Time is Now. AMP is an organization that supports BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions against Israel, and puts the ADL, your partner for No Place for Hate, and the AJC, who's partnered with Westfield Town to adopt the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism, on a list of organizations that people should not work with. It certainly seems like there's an inconsistency, or perhaps an incompatibility, with what you're saying, Dr. Gonzalez, and what BOE leadership is doing in their personal and/or professional time.
Time's up.
I think that's a topic that warrants more acknowledgement and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned.